Welcome to Top 5 UK Train Travel Tips. I've been a bit of a train nerd. This is going to be really good fun to record. You don't have to be a train nerd to enjoy this episode, and you don't have to even use the trains ridiculously often in order to get some benefit out of listening to this episode. Just as a caveat, all the prices and discounts that I will say throughout this episode, they're all correct at the time of recording. Just as an FYI. There's 3 personal travel tips here, and then there's 2 business travel tips as well. So again, this does apply to your personal life and your business life as well. Starting with the personal then, top tip number 1 is to get a rail card. Rail cards are incredibly useful. You can save an awful lot of cash by using a rail card. There's a multitude of rail cards out there. The key ones to mention would be a network rail card. That predominantly covers the southeast of England, anywhere up to, say, Kings Lynn, all the way down to Exeter, I believe. Kent, Sussex, Surrey, all those sorts of areas. Network rail cards are really good because they provide you with roughly a third off, 33-34% of rail fares that are off-peak. It's also useful because you can apply this to 4 adults as well. So you can have yourself and 3 other adults, so 4 adults in total. So let's, for example, say you're off to the football or you're off to the theatre or whatever. You and your mates decide to go to London. You're travelling from, place X. One of you's got a rail card. You get the discount, but then your mates also get the discount as well. A network rail card costs the investment into a rail card is £30 for the year. I believe you can get 3 years for £70 at the time of recording as well. So investment of £30, but if you and your mates save 30 quid in the first go, then the rail card has almost paid for itself already. So you can see how and why you might only need to use a train once or twice a year in order to benefit from having a rail card. Another good rail card is the To Travel Together rail card. So let's just say you like days out with your wife or your husband or co-partner, whomever, and you use the railways an awful lot, you can get a To Travel Together rail card. Again, that's £30 for the year. The advantage that this rail card has got is that it covers most of the UK network. So you're not just restricted to the southeast. So for example, you might be travelling from Hull to Liverpool, for example. By rail, the To Travel Together rail card will cover that journey. So again, a lot of advantages there. £15 per person, £30 for the year, and again that will give you a third off rail fares as well. There are other rail cards that you can get. You can get a Network Gold rail card or an annual rail card. That's got a lot of advantages as well. If you happen to be listening to this podcast and you're unemployed, you're claiming universal credit or something along those lines, then you can also get a special rail card as well. That normally gives you 50% off all train fares. Last time I checked in. In order to find out a bit more about rail cards, the best thing to do, possibly go to the National Rail website, nationalrail.co.uk. There's a lot of information on there. There's also various other rail cards, 16 to 25 rail card, a 27 to 30 rail card. No, I don't know why they are like they are. You should just have a generic one there, in my opinion. It is what it is. There's a lot of changes coming into the railways in due course as well. There's looking to create a new body for the railways, Great British Railways. So a lot of stuff going on there. I'll just nip through some of the other rail cards that you can get. So we've mentioned the 16 to 25 rail card. You can get a senior rail card, so if you're age 60 or over. The two together rail card we've said. A disabled person's rail card. I don't know too much about how you have to qualify for that, or what disabilities are covered in that. You'd have to look for that yourself. 26 to 30 rail card we've mentioned. You can get a family and friends rail card as well. That's probably advantageous if you've got a family. I would say if you're just going out with your mates, the regular rail card, the network rail card is probably the best. Network rail card we've just mentioned. The 16 to 17 saver. You can enjoy 50% off standard anytime off-peak or advanced tickets with that. Again, that's £30 a year. And the Veterans Rail card as well. Then there are 9 different rail cards. They've all got their own quirks. I mentioned you can go to the National Rail website, but you can also go to railcard.co.uk, and if you get the app, you just look for the Railcard app as well. That's tip number 1. Tip number 2, look for day ranges. They can save you a lot of cash as well. So for example, if you're going to London, hypothetically, you rather than picking out a particular destination, it's probably easier to get a travel card that covers zones 1 to 6 on the underground network. It means you can use the bus, the tram, underground of course, and all various modes of transport. So it's quite a useful thing to get. Day ranges will vary from place to place. I'm not going to go through a list of them. My favourite one, or my favourite 2 that I know of, are the Cornish Day Ranger and the Devon Day Ranger. So the Cornish one's brilliant because actually you can get a ticket basically that covers Cornwall for the day. When I got one a while ago, it's about £13.50 I think it was, which great value for money, especially considering that you can start your journey in Plymouth, which I appreciate for people that are clued on about geography. Plymouth is in Devon, but the Cornish Day Ranger does cover it. It covers all the way from Plymouth all the way down to Penzance, including all the branch lines to St Ives, Newquay, Looe and Falmouth. Now for £13.50, that's, in my opinion, cracking value, especially as it's about 2.5 hours from Plymouth, 2.5 hours from Plymouth to Penzance. So again, cracking value for money. You get a few good days out with Cornish Ranger. And again, you might find that Ranger ticket might be cheaper than booking a return ticket between Plymouth and Penzance. Similar with a Devon Ranger, that covers anywhere from Plymouth all the way up to Barnstaple, all the way up to Tiverton Parkway, I believe. So again, that's about £18.50 last time I checked in. Again, really good value for cash. So you might find that getting a Day Ranger in those particular areas is much more cost effective than just booking a regular return. It actually gives you a bit more flexibility as well, especially if you like sitting on the trains and looking out the window, especially that bit of line between Teignmouth and Exeter. Cracking bit of railway line and scenery that is. So number 2, look for Day Ranger tickets. The easiest place to do that is to go onto the various train websites, or again you can go onto nationalrail.co.uk. That will give you a whole list of various tickets and ranges that you can get as well. Top tip number 3, buy early. So the paradox that we have with British Railways is that 9 times out of 10, if you are just walking up and doing it on the day, we have one of the most expensive networks in the world. However, if you book in advance because you know where you're going and what you're doing, actually it turns out to be one of the cheapest, that even in Europe, one of the cheapest. So don't buy into this media hype that we're always expensive. It's not always the case. So on a personal note, if you know where you're going and you don't want the flexibility, so let's just say you want to go away to Newcastle for the weekend and you live in London, you might decide that you can book a ticket from London to Newcastle up that coast there. You type in, let's just say you want to go on Friday and you want to come back on Monday. Voila. Chances are, if you're buying early, up to 10 or 12 weeks before your destined departure, chances are you'll get some heavily discounted tickets. That's not always the case, but the chances are that is the case. The only disadvantage you have with that is there's not a lot of flexibility. So if you are booked in on a train at 10 o'clock in the morning, for example, you have to be on that train at 10 o'clock in the morning. If you're not, unlucky, unless you have a really good excuse as to why you're not there. They might let you on, they might not. So that's the paradox. If you buy early, you buy in advance, then it could be quite cheap, but you might not necessarily have that flexibility. But if you walk on and do it on the day, chances are it's incredibly expensive depending on where you're going and what you're doing. And I can understand why people do prefer flying half the time as well. In this episode, what I'm not going to do is get into the whole types of different tickets that you can get in terms of peak, off-peak. I'm not going to get into all of that. It's a quagmire. You need an expert to really need a proper rail ticket expert to be able to help you out with that. This is just a very generic overview looking to try to save you some cash if you're using the railways. That's the personal stuff done. On the business aspect of it, a couple of things here. And I'm attacking this from a specifically from a property point of view, but again, I can imagine this applies to quite a few businesses anyway. So from a business point of view, your train travel, it can be quite easily expendable. Obviously speak to your accountant beforehand, but if you are travelling, you have to travel you don't have to travel, I'm being facetious. It might be advantageous if you travel first class because you need to concentrate and get your work done on your laptop, or you're writing a book or anything like that. You might decide that you need to travel first class, and again, speak to your accountant, because you'll probably find that is a legitimate expense anyway, so that's advantage number one. Number two, if you do travel for your business or for business reasons, just remember to record it, lodge it where necessary, keep records of why you've gone. Our accountant says the same thing to us all the time. He says, guys, if you're going out to places, as long as you've got a reason to travel, i.e. you might be viewing a property or you might be having an investor meeting, those sorts of things, you can record that expense quite easily in the business. And again, that's not always going to necessarily apply to every business, but from a property point of view, it's quite an efficient thing to do. So again, it can be quite advantageous to travel by rail every once in a while. I appreciate that might not be as good as earning 45 pence a mile or 25 pence a mile, but you might be a property investor and you might not be able to drive. So you might have to be reliant on train journeys. So there we are, 5 top UK train travel tips. Just to recap, the 3 personal ones. Number 1, get a rail card. Various types of rail card that you can get. Go to railcard.co.uk or nationalrail.co.uk to find out more. Number 2 would be to look for day ranges. These can vary from place to place. My favourite examples would be Cornwall and Devon. They're relatively inexpensive to purchase, and they can just be purchased on the day, and they're quite cost effective, I have found, whenever I've used them. Again, you want to be looking at National Rail for up-to-date information about day ranges, or use the various company websites out there. So for example, you might want to use Great Western Railways or different railway networks. Number 3, buy early. So if you know where you're going, if you know your time that you want to go, you know your destination, that can save a lot of cash. It's always advantageous to go onto the correct rail provider's website, and no disrespect to things like Red Spotted Hanky or Trainline.com, but they always end up paying booking fees. You always end up having to pay them booking fees. That's not always the case with the particular provider itself. So for example, if you're travelling from London to Cardiff, rather than using Trainline.com, if you just go on Great Western Railway, I think it's GWR, use their website instead, you'll save a little bit on booking fees basically. And then on the business aspect, so number 4, or business number 1, business travel can be quite easily expendable depending on your business. Feel free to travel first class, because again, it's important that you need to be on the train to do your work, to head into London or wherever it is you're going. You need to make sure you're mentally prepared and mentally fresh for whatever it is that you're doing. And then the second one there, obviously have a legitimate reason for travel, and remember to record all of this where necessary. Our accountant gives us that advice. You must record why you're going and what for. And again, as a property investor, if we're attending networking meetings or we have investor meetings and bits and pieces like that, these are relatively good reasons for being able to record train travel as a business expense. Hopefully it helps. I haven't geeked out too much. Hopefully you're not been put off by this episode, and hopefully you find that there's a lot of useful content in there. Join us next week where we go through 5 ways to prepare for a property market crash. And on Thursday, in the travel series, we are high up in the Andes, and the second part of our wonderful blue dollar resort, which we love. As always, thank you for listening to the podcast. Please do recommend the podcast to other people. Leave us a nice review on iTunes, that always helps. And tell other people about the show. Until next time, hasta luego.